Hello everybody, it's Larry. Welcome to today's video. In episode 5, we left off where we had just started building our tree. We'd gotten 15 people in it, and we were looking at what information we could get for free just by hovering over it. Well, now we're going to take it one step further. So if you haven't, the very first video last week that was the intermediate #1 video, you can take a look at it because it kind of fits right here in this one. So right here we talked about going to this free index, and on this index there were a whole bunch of free resources. I mean, I'm scrolling fast, I know it's kind of blurry, but look at all of those resources. I mean, just lots. But we're going to come up here to the top and look at a couple in particular that are important to us, and that is the 1880 census, which is free, and the 1940 census. These can help us tremendously in finding our family tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to look at our tree, and let's see who we can use this on. Now, Joe was born in 1941, so it's pretty safe to assume that his mother was also alive in 1940 as well as his father, being that he was born in the following year. So we can find probably Calvin and Valda, and Leroy and Alpha, because now Linda's adopted, but they adopted her. She was obviously alive, so also they will probably be alive. And we can actually do here Charlie Jones, 1969, 1951, so Charlie and Maud. Now, H.T. Bissell and Lizzie, it turns out they will not be alive at this time, and neither will Robert and Loretta Etta Smith. They died at a younger age. And Charles and Lulu Ann will also be alive. So the 1940 census is going to give us some really good information. So let's start with Calvin. So we're going to do Calvin Jones, and what we know about him so far is we think he was born in 1909, estimated, in Arkansas. We're going to click search, and by doing that we see the 1940 census. Now remember, the 1940 census is free, so if I was to look up here, I don't have a subscription. It's asking me to subscribe, so there's no subscription required here. But I'm going to go ahead and click on view image, and it's actually going to bring up the 1940 census. So even without a subscription, you can look at the 1940 as well as the 1880 censuses, and it can give you some pretty valuable information. So we're going to look in here, and we're going to look at Calvin. So we have Calvin Jones, we have the wife Valda, and see this little parentheses with the X in it? That is who gave the census taker the information. So right here, Ethel turned it in, and also Paul was married to an Ethel there. She turned it in. Doc turned it in here and up there. So you can tell wherever there is an X, that's who turned in the census. And that will actually come in important on some of your records, because there are some people who gave very accurate information, and then sometimes there were some people in the families that didn't really know and they guessed. And you can kind of tell which ones they are after you've been researching, and then you can tell who turned in the information to kind of get an idea whether or not you can put, some stock in it or no stock in it at all. So we're going to find some additional clues and some verifications for our tree. Real important stuff. So right here we have Calvin Jones, we have Valda. Right here it says it was Tavier. Well, that's actually Travis. It was spelled really weird, but that's Travis, and that's Thomas, went by Tom. Well, look over here, it says birthplace. The birthplace for Calvin was Arkansas. The birthplace for Valda is Louisiana, which matches what we had before. Now, what's also important is, see the X here? It did say the same. The census taker, Arkansas, same. Arkansas. And they're like, no, she wasn't born in Arkansas. Marked through it, wrote Louisiana. Okay, so that was real important. So they wrote in Arkansas for all these people, and they made her scratch it out. So when that happens, because they said no and asked the person to correct it, they're pretty strong about that, because there was some conflict saying, hey, no, that's not it. So that's a really strong indicator that Louisiana is probably right. Now, some other clues that you can get here. It says the grade column. So right here for Calvin, it says that he completed high school 4th year. That's actually quite a bit of education for 1940. Right here, Valda completed 8th grade. And then, of course, the kids haven't completed any because they're ages 5 and 3, which is, not unexpected. Now, here's the great thing. Even though we don't have a subscription, we do have a small tree. We can come up here to the top right, and we can click Save. And we're going to save to Calvin Jones. And we're going to be able to save all the information we want. So this information, Calvin Jones, well, it says Calvin W., which is on the census. So we're going to add the W in, and we're going to make that the preferred. So we're going to bring that in. So if we don't, see it says Calvin, we add that, it brings the W in, and it shows you what is going to come into our tree. These are all pretty much the same, so that's good. And we're going to come down, and we get to look at Valda. So we got Valda Jones. Well, we don't want to put Valda Jones. We want to keep Bissell, about 1913, Louisiana. And this is new. We didn't have that she was in Collier in Greene County, Arkansas. We didn't have any of that information for her. So we're going to add that information to the tree simply by including it with this check mark right here. And you can see the checks by what it's going to add. Okay. So right here, it says Tavier Jones. Well, it's not going to be that, and we'll show you how to do that in a minute. It says about 1935, and then right here, Thomas Jones. Okay, so it added in the information for the two children. We can add them into our tree and prove it with this 1940 census. Now, right here, the green thing says edit all fields. We're going to click on that, and we know that this is Travis. So we're going to change the name to Travis. Whoops, spell that right. All right, so we're going to close editing. So it says Travis C. Jones. So now we're bringing in the right information right from the get-go, and we're going to click Save It to our tree. So in our tree, we're actually going to now have children for that. So we got Travis, Thomas, and Joe, because Joe is our person in our tree that connected up. So now we have 3 out of the 4 brothers listed. So we're going along there pretty good. So let's go back to the tree. And so we've got the 1940 for these two, and let's look at it for Leroy David. So pull up just by clicking on their name, click on that, and then click on search. And remember, we talked about in the other video how it brings up all the information we have, which is a birth in 1910 in Oklahoma for Leroy David Wright. So we've got find a grave, okay, and so we got the 1940 census. We're going to view that image. So remember, we have him married to Alpha Harbaugh. Alpha being a pretty unique name, we can tell right away that we have the right census. It says Leroy David, Leroy D, and Alpha. Okay. Now remember the X right here. Alpha had that. Okay. She's the one that turned in the information to the census taker. Now this is interesting. This census is in New Orleans, Louisiana, in 1940. Now they were both born in Oklahoma. Okay. The place of residence at this time, Louisville and Oklahoma. Okay, Louisville, Kentucky, and Oklahoma City. See the word city right there? Louisville, Jefferson County, Kentucky, Oklahoma, the city, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma. All right, so we've got some great information right there. We go to the education again. We hover over this as college 4th year, and then for Alpha, college 3rd year. And then we can scroll on over, we can get a vocation. Okay, he's in the, see, it says physician, okay? And then right above it, it's scratched out and it says dentist. Now, that was really important because in this period, he was actually in the Navy, stationed in New Orleans, and was aboard a ship that was docked there when they took the census. So they came up, they took the census, and he was on board. And all dentists, have to go to medical school. And so he was marked officially as a physician, even though he was technically a dentist. So by virtue of his office, okay, and the people in New Orleans that knew that, they marked him down as a physician because that's how he was classified in the military, because he had the medical license. But the Alpha, remember, okay, for the sake of accuracy, and I mean, she was very much a stickler on being accurate. All right, she corrected it and put dentist. All right, so there we go. So the industry was dentist. And so there's some good information, right there on them. It also kind of gives you some clues. If you didn't know that they were on a ship in World War II, you would have had some additional questions saying, okay, if they're both born in Oklahoma and his residence is Louisville, Kentucky, and hers is Oklahoma City, why are they given information for a census in New Orleans, Louisiana? And so when you come across things like that, when you're doing genealogy, always ask that additional question. It's like, why is this? Why this doesn't make sense? So if it doesn't make sense, then that's usually where there's a really good clue. Because if I was to investigate that, why was he in Louisville, and dig in, I'd find this rich family history about his military service. So we're going to go back and, oops, sorry. Well, let's go back forward. Let's pick that up again, because we're going to add this census to his profile. So we're going to come here, save to Leroy David Wright. All right, so Leroy David. We're going to stick with the David. 1910 is correct. Louisville, Kentucky, that's new. And it's bringing in all that additional information for him here. So here it says Alpha Harbaugh, and of course she's married, it says Alpha Wright. Oklahoma City is the same place. New Orleans. See, we didn't have about being in New Orleans and married, so we're going to add that information in there, add that to our tree. So now this census is added over. You see it in our sources. It's now in our sources right here. And also if we come up here and we click on gallery, you see it here. As we add more things, it will start showing up. Now, right here it says possible death records. We've got some hints for Leroy David Wright, and right here. But now we're going to have a subscription to get most of those, unless one of them is a site called Find a Grave. And we'll talk about that in another video. So unless one of these says Find a Grave, we're really not going to be able to pull it in here. It says Find a Grave information. So we can actually look at this, and there it is. There is the mausoleum where they are. Okay. And Dr. Leroy David Wright, dental medicine, survived by his wife Marion Wright of Yukon. Okay, so here's another thing. See, it says survived by his wife Marion Wright of Yukon, 2 sons, Lee Wright and Bob Campbell, 4 daughters, Linda Hinton of Montana, Connie, Marianne, and Nancy, 17 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren. Okay, so my granddad, after my grandmother passed away, he died, or she died, and at a very much older age, he decided to get married again. And he asked me, he says, what do you think? I said, what would she have wanted? I mean, would she have wanted you to live your last years unhappy, or to have the company of somebody? And what would you want her to do if you died? He said, well, I'd want her to go out and live. I said, she'd want the same thing for you. So after a while, he did marry her. Long story, but that's how it says Marion right there. Now, it says he served as lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy from 1940 to 1945. He was active in Oklahoma City civic affairs, etc., etc. So remember here, he was a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. Lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. And remember before, we had the whole thing on New Orleans that says, hey, somewhere in here, if I didn't personally already know the story of the military, and I was wondering why in 1940 was he in New Orleans, Louisiana, right here would have been another clue. And again, this is free. This is not part of Ancestry. This is Find a Grave, and it has the information there. So there's the mausoleum spot, and right there, he's buried. And you can't really see it on here. It's not really clear, but it's got, Leroy David Wright, and it has Alpha Harbaugh. Okay, even though he's survived by his wife, Alpha and he had already bought that, and he was buried there with Alpha, even though he was married to Marion. And so that's the Find a Grave. If you have a Find a Grave, it is also free, and you can find a lot of information for people there. Now, it doesn't have the one click to bring it in from Find a Grave, but we can bring this information, like the burial at Rose Hill Cemetery. That's really good information. So now, looky here, brand new, we have a death date. And we have, the place, Yukon, Canadian County, and we have, this. So we have this additional information, and looky here, we've got September 24th, 1910. So now we have an additional birthday, okay? And now we also have he was born in Murray County. So we have much more information that we can bring in for Leroy David Wright. And we don't want to bring in Marion Wright because she... long story. So we're not bringing in Marion. I'd actually forgotten about Marion until we were doing this. So anyway, we've now got that information in the tree. So when we click on this, look at this. We've got September 24th, 1910, Murray County, Sulphur, Oklahoma, United States of America, and he died May 28th, 1993. Okay, as Yukon. He actually died. He lived in Piedmont, not Yukon, but that's where, I guess the ME was. So look at what we're getting just from using the free resources, and we can do the same thing for Alpha and Valda. And I'm going to go up on to Charlie, and we're going to show you a couple things with Charlie. Remember I said there were two censuses that were free, the 1940 and the 1880? Well, he actually overlaps both. So let's take a good look at this. Now, because it's got family trees, if I click here, it's not going to give me this because I don't have a subscription, right? So, I can look and say, okay, is there any information on here that I can use? Sometimes there'll be some really good information in there, but there's not. Now, I can get his 1940 census information, and we will grab that real quick for the purpose of being consistent. And so it says right here, Charlie Jones, wife Ethel, you remember that was the middle name, Maud Ethel, Bissell, and then we have Bissell, Maud Ethel, and then we have Cecil, all right? And we've got the birthplaces are all Arkansas. Now, look at the school, the grade. So we've got fourth grade, elementary school, fourth grade was as far as he went. And the wife, Ethel, went to eighth grade. And Cecil went to eighth grade. So eighth grade was kind of the thing. Now, this is kind of something that happens in modern schools in the United States, and we really don't give it much thought because your kids, they graduate kindergarten. I mean, they do a big pomp and circumstance, robe and hat and everything. And then when they graduate sixth grade, they have another big, ceremony. And then when they graduate eighth grade, just a couple years later, they have another ceremony that they're going into high school. And then they have another one when they graduate high school. Well, those are carry-on traditions. Today, and I'll be honest with you, my kids have gone through all of those, and I look at them going, wow, we're celebrating graduating fourth grade. I mean, it's just kind of assumed today. I mean, it's to think of somebody not graduating, sixth grade and moving on is just not something that we think about in the United States anymore. But right here, it was a big deal, and there were graduation ceremonies, and it was really an important thing. Well, being that he only completed fourth grade, and who knows, what the learning was there. And again, fourth grade, and he's 60 years old now. He could obviously communicate, but that's probably why she was the person that dealt with the census taker. Okay, so there's some good information there. So we're going to save this to Charlie Jones. And let's see what information we're going to get. Nothing here. We've already got the actual birth date for them. We're going to get a location. And we've got Maud, is Branch, not Bissell, Maud Ethel Branch. See, we've got about 1890. We've got August 1889. So ours is a little more accurate. We get a location. And we're going to be able to add Cecil. And we didn't have Cecil before in our records, so we're going to be able to add another son to go with the person who's in our tree, which is Charlie. We're going to add Charlie's brother. Now, there's a saved a tree at the top, and then there's also one down here at the bottom. And you can click on either one. So now we have our Calvin, and now we have Cecil, who are now children of Charlie, and there's our 1940 census. All right, so we're going to come back to our tree. And remember how we said that he lived in two of them. The 1880, well, look, he was born in 1879. So let's take a look and see if we can find his 1880, because this is going to be real important for finding parents. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the left, unless we see it over here on the right, and there's probably going to be a lot. It's going to be hard to pick it out. But right here, it does have it. Okay, so, but what you're probably going to do is just go to the census. Okay, and then we're going to pick the year out of this. So it's got all the censuses listed in order. Okay, it's got them the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and it's the 1880 right here that's free. We're going to click on that, and it's still going to keep our search criteria, but only going to look in this one. And if you're in the United States, you're going to want the United States Federal Census. So that's this one right here. And so we're going to get it, and so we're going to do, Charlie Jones. Well, look at that. We have all these Charlie Joneses. Wow, which one's ours? And that becomes a real good question. Now, we know that the birthplace was Arkansas, so we can actually filter these out. We had a Charlie J, but, parents or spouse, we don't know which one of these that there are. So we're actually going to have to look through these, and they become hints. All of these are hints. Now, we're going to actually filter this down a little bit. We're going to say it was born exact to Greene County, USA. we're going to see if he was actually in that. Well, see, it didn't return anything. That was too narrowed down because we said Greene County, Arkansas. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take that out and we're going to just say Arkansas, born in Arkansas. And that's going to give us a list that's much more manageable. There's still 300 and it's still going to take some work. So what we're going to do is, remember when we said, okay, we had Greene County, Arkansas? Well, look at right there. We got Greene County, Arkansas. Now, it's St. Francis was the city, but it's Greene County, Arkansas. We're going to look at this record. And we got Joseph Jones, Sally, Henry, and Ida. And I happen to know a family story that one of my dad's, his youngest brother, is actually Henry, the one that's not listed in our tree yet. And he was actually named after this Henry. So I know enough family clues just from listening to family stories that I can look at this one with a pretty good guess that it's probably going to be right. So Arkansas, Greene County, which matches our criteria. And it says Joseph Jones, Sally, Jonathan, William, and let's see, Henry. He's named after Ida and Charlie. And then that's our Charlie. And remember, he was born, in 1879, and that's him. Okay? So we don't have proof that this is him yet, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save it to him simply because I want to look at him. And then we can make a tree tag, and we'll talk about that in another video, that notes that this is still being researched. Okay? So we got named Charlie J. Jones, Charlie Jones, 1879. We got an actual date, Greene County, because we had to change, that. St. Francis, Greene County, Arkansas. Greene County was what we had before, so this is most likely going to be it. And then the father of Charlie is Joseph. So we're going to get parents. And right here it says 1845 approximately from Alabama. So we're going to put those in because that's really all we have. And it has some mother information. So this gives us clue on Sally. And then we're going to add the children in there so we get all the siblings. Now, when I first started doing genealogy, I didn't put the siblings. And that was a huge mistake because a lot of times verifying the siblings is how you're going to, prove that this is indeed the connection. We don't have any proof for this connection. We have a strong belief that it is the connection, but we don't have any proof that that is our Charlie. But we'll get some here pretty soon in one of the videos we're getting ready to do in a little bit. All right, so we're going to go back to our tree. And we have the 1880. Now here we've got an opportunity to do this again for Charles Harbaugh. So Charles Harbaugh was Cali, Kansas. And Harbaugh being a unique name, hopefully we'll be able to find something there. If you remember, we said we go to the census and voter list. Okay, so we're going to click on that. And then the 1880s are free. So right here, there's our Pleasant Valley, Crowley, Kansas. So we're going to look at the view image on this one. So we've got it pretty much right away. And this is a little harder to read, so we're going to have to, I'm double clicking and then dragging it back and forth if you're wondering. All right. And it says the father, Henry Harbaugh, the mother, Lydia, and then, Charles is there. So there's Charles, son, age 3. Now, notice right here, see the numbers 3 and then there's 4 here. All right. These are the people, the line's same name. Look right here. This one is David Lamb. David Lamb is a boarder, and this boarder lived with them. They had extra room. He was age 28, lived in the house. There's a farmer. So he lived in the house, worked on the farm to pay for his rent, and also, probably for a little bit more. But he lived in and worked on their farm. So that kind of tells you that the lifestyle that they had there in Kansas. Wife, daughter, and 2 sons. Okay? So where were they born? Well, remember, ours are the ones in green. Ohio and Illinois. Okay, so these were born in Illinois, and then these were born in Kansas. But look at what's consistent amongst all the kids. The father says Ohio, which is where the father was born, and the mother says Illinois, which is where she was born. Now, another big clue, when you're going to find the next step, and we'll talk about those in subsequent videos, probably significantly down the road, but see, her, even though she's born in Illinois, her father was born in Kentucky, and her mother was born in Virginia, okay? And then he was born in Ohio with a father's birthplace in Pennsylvania and mother's birthplace in Pennsylvania. So both of his parents were Pennsylvania. He was born in Ohio. So they moved and were living in Ohio when he was born. Well, what year was that? Well, 42 years before this. So in 1838, he was born, and he was born in Ohio. Okay? So when we go to looking, we're going to actually get some searches, and we're going to say, hey, give me Henry Harbaugh, born in 1838, living in Ohio, parents in Pennsylvania, from Pennsylvania. And so by giving that kind of search, or with the wife, 37 years old, so 1843, she was born in Illinois with parents from Kentucky and Virginia. And it's those extra, places like that. When we look at the census and we look and we see, okay, where are they born? We find the one that we think that is her mother. If it doesn't say Kentucky, we may not have the right one. If it doesn't say Virginia for the mother, if the father Kentucky, the mother Virginia, then we may not have the right census. Now, these are not gospel. These can be mistaken, and that's where we were talking about before, who turned it in. And right here, we don't see the X that you normally see. It's not on there. This census taker didn't take note of that. And so a lot of times you'll see the X, sometimes you won't. You don't know who turned that in. Another thing that's missing is you don't see the years of education. Okay, you see their ages, you don't see the years of education. And so as you go back, that may or may not be the case. Right here it says, did they attend school? Well, right here, that's blank, and then from right here, the kids did. And then the youngest kid, being 3, hasn't attended school. So neither Henry nor Lydia attended school. Now this goes all the way up to 1880, and so that's a pretty interesting piece of information. But we're going to click save, put this to Charles, Harbaugh, and let's see what additional information. We'll get Henry, we'll get Lydia, because we'll add in the parents, and that'll help us search for when we go to, when we get a subscription, even a trial subscription. By having this in here, we know right where to look and to go real quick to that information we're looking for. So we'll let this save to the tree, and take 1 second. It's up there, it's working. All right, so we're gonna go back to our tree, and so look, it's already added some information up here: Joseph and Sally. Okay, and then down here, Henry and Lydia. And if I expand that out, there wasn't enough information yet to, potential mother and father, that one. Sometimes you'll get that and it'll latch onto some other trees with the through lines, and later it may do that. But it does have hints. Remember, the green leaf means that there's hints. So we click on that person, there's 6 hints. Now, we can't really get a lot of hints unless it's a find a grave hint, okay? We got a Joseph Nathan. We don't know. I don't know if that is Joseph Nathan's there. Could be a Joseph Nathan. And birth, Alabama. Was our fellow born in Alabama? Yep, he was. So, and then died there. There's an 1870 census that could be. So that's pretty good. Now, the quick compare, it says new information here, and that was the same place. So this probably is his. So if you were to get a subscription, you would be able to probably add an 1860 census and an 1870 census to this. But right now, if you click review, you can look at some of the information, but actually, nope, I thought it was going to give it to us. So, boy, it tried. So, but we still get the information. So we can actually, what I like to do a lot of times in this place, I'll actually highlight it and copy it, and then go over into the notes for that person, for Joseph Jones in my tree. So come over here to Joseph Jones, and right there, and so we can go to the profile, and we're going to add some notes. So quick edit, tools, view notes. All right, so I can just go here, right click and paste, and there's the information that was from the 1870 census. And then I can actually do this, and I like to put some underlines, and there's no proper form here, and I save that, and that way when I do that, and I can get the information that we had for that other 1860 census and drop it in there too. And if I find any other things that I can't get because I'd have to pay for, I can come over here and drop them in my notes. Then when I'm ready to do some work, you can click on the notes. See this little thing that looks like a clipboard? You click on that and it brings up your notes. I get this information and say, okay, I'm looking for this information. Joseph Jones was 24, Sarah, here's the family members. And if I find the 1861 right before it, I might actually even get a parent. So we're going to go to Joseph Jones, search. We're going to look at that census information again. Okay, so Joseph Nathan Jones, there's the find a grave. Let's right click and look at the find a grave real quick, because a lot of times when you go there, there's the gravestone. Looky here. Now this is a winner. So we come right here. It says Joseph Nathan Jones. Okay, and it says parents Jonathan Shelby Jones, and mother Bethany Jones. Well, obviously it was not Jones, but we got Bethany, and then we have Henry Jonathan Shelby Espy. So we have this information and where they're buried in Greene County, Arkansas. We actually have birth and death dates. Okay, so, and if we wanted to see it, it's actually in the plot, number 11, row 33. It's right there, and we get a photo. We can actually get the photo of the marker itself, Joseph N. Jones. So all this information we've gotten for free without an Ancestry subscription. So we're going to come back over. We're going to go look at our tree. Now, normally I would just copy that in, but this video is running a little long, so we're going to cut it short right here, and then we'll pick up here on the next video, and we'll show you how to bring that information over from Find a Grave in there. In short, you highlight the picture, go to the picture page, where it shows the image on the full page, drag that over to your desktop, and then over into this person. But we'll do that and show you all the instructions for that in another video. All right, well, hope you enjoyed it. So what we've done, just to recap, we've gone through the 1940 census for those that were alive in 1940. The 1880, Calvin wasn't alive, so this and on back weren't alive. But there were a few here that were in 1880. They were not alive in 1880, and they weren't alive in 1940 either. So these don't show in either one. Robert will be in the 1880, and so will Loretta. So we'll be able to find them in the 1880 and be able to get some more information for this tree, especially since we have exact information. Okay, so that'll come in really easy. And then for Joseph Jones, we're going to be able to actually look at the 1860 census and 50 census and look at that metadata that shows for us and get the father's name. And also we got the father's name right here. We got it from Find a Grave. Jonathan Shelby Jones, born in 1818, and Bethany, born in 1820. So we could add that in manually right here if we wanted to. We'll do that in the next video. Anyway, so we're going to cut it off right there. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. We'll continue in this series tomorrow.